Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll be explaining about one of the AWS service called Lambda. So Lambda is primarily a event-based serverless compute service which can be used for wide variety of use cases. Okay, so in this video, I'll cover one use case to read and write files, file operations on S3 bucket. Okay, so we'll look at Lambda overview followed by this hands-on in this video. Alright, so before we proceed, my name is Rohan, and if you're new to my channel, go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss any of my informational videos. Alright, so let's get started. So before we jump into the hands-on, let us try to understand what that Lambda is and where it is used and what are some of the use cases. Right, so in a simple term, Lambda is a serverless compute service which typically used for running a piece of code in response to an event. So piece of code can be written in multiple languages. It supports Python, Node.js, and etc. And it runs code in response to an event, which means it is typically executed automatically when certain event occurs. Right, for example, if you have external applications or business users writing or uploading file onto S3, so this operation, upload operation, can trigger this Lambda event. Okay, so this is the trigger part, event based. So that's why we call events. And the way it is charged is per paper invocations. Means only when the Lambda gets executed, only then it will be counted towards the billing. Pricing for Lambda is very cheaper, so that's why it is being used in multiple use cases. So for every account, first 1 million requests are absolutely free, and thereafter for every 1 million it charges only $0.2 for every million. So if you are making 10 million invocations, then you will have the charge of only $2. And you don't have to work on your compute resources because Lambda itself will automatically manage as the computer services. Okay. um, and also it has a built-in metrics captured on the CloudWatch. So CloudWatch is a log-based service which will aggregate all the logs coming out of most of the services in AWS environment. So whenever you execute Lambda, right, it will capture all the logs in the CloudWatch. Okay, and when we start our hands-on, I'll show you the sample logs as well. Okay, so what are some of the use cases, right? Where what use cases Lambda can be used, right? You must be wondering. So I have one use case here, wherein if you want to process any files in a real time, then you can use Lambda to automatically process the file which is uploaded to S3. So this use case is primarily used for S3. Not only S3, one of the use cases on S3. So let's say we were talking about this example, right? Whenever a user or a application um, drops a file or uploads a file, the Lambda can be triggered. Similarly, let's say you have a video file coming in and you wanted to generate the thumbnail. So for that also Lambda can be used. And let's say you have a zip file getting uploaded to S3. Okay, then you can use your Lambda to unzip the file. Similarly, if you upload multiple files, a Lambda can be used to zip the file. And let's say you have other CSV file that is coming in, and if you want to load that data into like DynamoDB or RDS system, for that use case also you can use Lambda service, right? Lambda has got its own limitations as well. So it's not preferred for longer duration processing or high volume transactions or data warehousing applications where you have a lot of data to process. So that will not be a proper use case. So that's the only limitation. So Lambda timeouts for every 15 minutes. So all your processing must end within these 15 minutes. Otherwise, Lambda will fail and your operations will not succeed. Okay, I hope basic overview on the Lambda is now clear, along with the limitations, right? So now let's go ahead and do the hands-on part. So for that, I'll go ahead and open the browser, and I'll go ahead and open the AWS console. So my console short form is learning with Rohan. Sign in. I'll just go ahead and open this. Okay, just go to my account and then management console. So we will have to first log into AWS console in order to get to this service. Okay, so my IAM user is Rohan, and I'll just go ahead my saved password. Okay, and I'll log in. Okay, now I'm logged on to the AWS console. So this is the dashboard or a home page, or you can say console home, right? And it will show the recently visited services also, just for your easier access, faster access. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the search bar, and I'll just type in Lambda. So click on this Lambda, and this is the home page for Lambda service. Okay, and the first section is the dashboard. So dashboard shows some of the highlights of this particular account. And before you proceed, if you notice, um, it's by default it will follow the region that we have logged in. So for example, this is my user account, and this is the region I am currently in. So if you change the region, you will not find the same functions. So you should be always focusing on the region first. Okay, so if you create a function in Asia Pacific, and the next time you change the region, you will not be able to find those Lambda functions. Okay, so you'll have to ensure the region first, and it will also shows how the number of Lambda functions and what's the code storage. I have like four Lambdas having a 2 KB worth of storage. Okay, and there are a few other metrics like error count, success count, throttles, invocations, how many executed, and what's the duration of the seconds, all of that. Okay, and this is the dashboard section. And if you go to the application, you can create an application. This is primarily a bundle of Lambda functions along with the other resources. For example, if you're interacting with the S3 and then the Lambda, it will be a combination of those two, or it can be a CloudWatch or SNS topic, SNS and then the Lambda. You can create such applications, and you also get the trigger to invoke those Lambdas. Okay, so for this example, I'll go ahead and click on this function. So functions are standalone functions which can be either bundled into applications, or you can execute it manually, or you can set that functions to execute based on a event. Okay, so let's go ahead and create one new function. And as soon as you click on create function, you will see three different sections, right? One is authorize author from scratch, or use the blueprint, or container image. So author from scratch is nothing but it's completely blank function, a lambda function, which you will have to write certain code. Another option, if you use blueprint, which means you will reuse some existing a template sort of lambda functions. So if you go to this section and navigate the blueprint name, here it is, lambda, like a hello world function. Similarly, there are many other standard functions which it's like a built-in functions that you will reuse. Okay, um, so these are the different blueprints. We can see them in the future, but that's the idea. right? Container image is if you have already have the pre bundled container image that you can use it and deploy it on your function. Okay, so for this example, let's go ahead and create one from the scratch. So as most of the programming starts with hello world, maybe I'll start with that quickly, and then we will parameterize it, and then we will go to that S3 operations one. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start with hello world lambda. Okay, and the runtime, so this is the function name, and then the runtime, I'll go ahead and choose the Python because that's where I'm writing the code. And architecture, you can leave that architecture, and for every lambda you will have to set the permissions. So what happens if you don't assign any role, execution role, by default lambda will create an execution role with the permissions to upload the logs to CloudWatch, because that's the only default permissions that you get along with a lambda. And if you want to interact with S3, then this default permissions will not help. Your lambda will primarily fail, saying okay, I'll not be able to read the S3 bucket. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll expand this, change a default execution role. So again you get three options. One is to create a new role with the basic lambda permissions. This is one option. Or you can use an existing existing role to execute this particular lambda function, and you will be able to choose the existing roles. Okay, so it's an existing IAM role. You can go ahead and check those if you have standard ones, or you can create a new role from AWS policy templates. See, policy templates are nothing but a predefined, templates where you can, easily, use the one that you need. Okay, so we'll give one, role, LWR test role, just to print something. So this role can be reused further. Okay, and policy template. So what type of what type of permissions that you wanted to give to this role is what defined here. So let's say if you are working with the S3, you can give this kind of policy. Okay, and don't worry about this advanced settings for now. We will discuss this later when we go to that advanced topics. Okay, so that's all the settings needed. Author from scratch, give the function name, choose the runtime, and then the architecture, and set the right permissions. Okay, I'll go ahead and create the function. Okay, so now we have created a lambda function, and here is the overview. Okay, so this is the functional overview. It gives some diagrams, and if you scroll down further, you will see different tabs, right? Code, test and monitor, configurations, all the different tabs. We'll start looking into those, so don't worry. Um, so here is the lambda function. Um, what we'll go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and write a message to print hello world. Okay, so for that we'll create one variable. It's called message, and here we can we can give some hard-coded text. So first I'll show one example hard-coded message, and then we will use events to parameterize this in a message. Okay, let's go ahead and use this print of message. So I'm using one new variable and I'm hard coding some value, and then I'll go ahead and print it. Similarly, so this is the return block. What I'll do is instead of hard coding, I'll just use this message. Okay, and that's it. And whenever you make any change to this function, you will have to deploy the changes first. That's why it says changes are not deployed. Right, first step is to deploy this lambda function, and then you can go ahead and test it. Okay, it will ask us to create the new test event. because right, I have mentioned that Lambda is a event based service, so we will have to set a event in order to execute this. Okay, I'll just give the event name as print message, and we don't have to give any of this key value because everything is hard coded. In the next execution, I'll show you how this can be parameterized and executed during the runtime. Okay, I'll go ahead and save this event. So now if you do this, this is the event. Okay, this is the event, and let's go ahead and test it. Okay, so the response now here is hello Lambda. So this is the message that we are printing it, right? So this is the start time, and this is the message, and this is the request ID. For every execution, for every transaction, we capture the request ID, and this request ID is used in AWS logging purposes and all. Okay, and it will also show you what's the total duration of this Lambda, and the build duration, and then the memory size, all of that information. Okay, see now we have a hard coded message printed now, and if you notice the deploy button is grayed out. Now what I'll do is, instead of doing this hard code, I'll pass it as an event. So for that, I'll just go ahead and use this event, and in the single quote I'll just you know type the event name, which is MSG. Okay, I'll not see now it is not hard coded, so we will have to configure this test event to pass the appropriate value for this MSG. So this is the event, right? So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pass this as an event. So it's basically making this Lambda work in a dynamic fashion. Okay, I'll go ahead and save this. Now I'll go ahead and see, nowhere we have hard coded, everything is based on this dynamic parameter, right? So I'll go ahead and see, and now if you see, as soon as we make this change, this deploy button is now activated. So any code change that you do on a Lambda, you will have to deploy it first. Okay, so once you deploy, you can go ahead and again make sure we are passing the value of message. This is the key and this is the value. Okay, now I'll go ahead and test it. Now you see learning with Rohan. So this is the dynamic thing. Now you can change this. Okay, you can now save this event and go ahead and test it. And if you notice, if you change the test events, you don't have to deploy that code again. So that means it's the test event, whatever you configure, it's not a code change, it is a runtime event change. I hope now it's clear. Now what we'll do is I'll go ahead and create another Lambda to read a file from S3. Okay, I'll go ahead and use this function. Now I'll give read S3 file content. Okay, and I'll go ahead and use this Python, and I'll leave all the architecture, and I'll attach this policy to read that file. Okay, S3, and I'll choose read only. For reading the file, this is fine. Read only permission is fine. So I'll go ahead and create this function. Okay, so now this function is created, and now what we'll do is, I have this code snippet. I don't want to type it all together because it'll take time, but on a high level, let me explain. So we have created two variables here. One is the bucket name and then the file key. Okay, and we have parameterized it, so it's not a hard-coded bucket name and file name. Okay, so we have these two variables getting the value from an event, and I have another variable to use the S3 client. So basically this Boto3 is a library which is primarily used for interacting with the S3 buckets. Okay, so first we'll have to initialize the Boto3 S3 connectivity, and from there you will have a try catch block. So it's primarily this code executes first, and in any case of any failure or any issues with this reading the S3 file, or not finding the file content, or missing file, or if there is any wrong file name, or if the file does not exist, then this exception block would be executed saying file does not exist. Okay, so I have this response variable, and what we do is, in order to read that particular file, so we use s3.getObject function. So this is the function where you will be able to read the file content. Okay, and this requires two parameters. This function needs two parameters. One is the bucket, and then the key. Key is nothing but the file name, and we have these two already parameterized. And when we execute this, we will be passing these two information and then getting the file contents. Okay, so once we have this connection object created and read the file, what we'll do is we'll get the response of this get object function, and we'll capture the body. We'll read that body and then print it on the file content. Okay, so this is a basic function that we can use it. So I'll go ahead and copy this content, and then we can use it here. Okay, so this is the sample code. Okay, so I have this thing ready. I'll go ahead and configure the test event, and 3 read event. Okay, and here I'll have to pass our bucket name and then the file name, right? So bucket name, was it the bucket name? Yeah, bucket name, oh sorry, so bucket name and then the key, file key. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you the bucket name. I have a bucket called Talent Pro, and then the file name, I think I have this captured. Okay, so I'll capture these two. Okay, so the bucket name is Talent Pro, and then there is a file called output.txt. Okay, I'll go ahead and save it. Now, just to show you, I'll go to this in a separate window. Okay, now I'm into S3 bucket, and I have a bucket called Talent Pro, and under that I have this file. Okay, output 000.txt. So this is the file that I'm trying to read in this Lambda. Okay, and then print the content of the body. Okay, I'll now go back to this, and I'll go ahead and configure the event. Let's make sure. Okay, bucket name, and this is ready. I'll go ahead and deploy this. Okay, this Lambda is now deployed. Let's go ahead and test it. Okay, so the file content retrieved successfully, and then the content of the file is this. Okay, so this is how you will read the data from S3 and then print it on the console. And if I go to the CloudWatch, you can also go to this monitor. Okay, you have a couple of choices. You can directly go from the search, or you can even go to this monitor section to go to this CloudWatch logs. Okay, so here under this log, there will be a log groups created, and under that log groups, so this is the lambda that we are trying to check, right? So if you go and click on this, when you do multiple execution, you will see multiple entries. So for now, I executed only once, so you will see this data. So this is the content of the file. So now see, we have executed this lambda function manually, right? So if you want to test it event based, then you can set that event by adding the trigger. Okay, a trigger can be added using this, and the source for that trigger would be choose as S3 bucket, and we can choose the S3 bucket as talent pro, and then whenever there is a file gets created on this particular bucket, on all object create events, this lambda will be automatically executed. Okay, you can also give the file extensions or particular prefixes or folders, and then it will look for that particular file, and as soon as a file is uploaded, then this lambda will be executed automatically. Okay, so now before upload anything, um, we can just leave it blank, so this lambda would be triggered automatically whenever a file is loaded on this particular folder. Okay, I'll go ahead and add, and if you go back to the S3 console for a particular bucket, okay, so you'll be able to find those events which are created. For example, under this we created, right? So I'm in the properties tab. If I scroll down, okay, here it is, event notifications. So this is the notification that we have created for this lambda function, right? So everything would be captured here. So this is one way, either you can go to this lambda and add a trigger. Okay, so that add trigger is the first option. So you can create that event trigger from here, or you can directly go to S3 and then create this event. Go to this bucket and then properties, and under that event notification, you can create another event. So here you can give that event name, prefix, and then the suffix you can give, and then you can choose this object creation. Whenever there is any object created or posted copied, then it will go ahead and create the event. Okay, so the lambda function, and then lambda function you can choose the this function, then you can click on save.